I don't know if I've ever spoken in front of my
okay. Experience.
This is gonna be interesting. So my name is Michael. I am working on a PhD at Johns Hopkins in the real name is topology optimization, but those are just nonsense words. It's structural optimization for this talk. And so what we do is, that's a very awkward angle. So we start with, I'm just come out here, I'm done. So we start with a structure like this, and we prescribe some boundary conditions, and maybe we put a load on it, and then we tell the optimizer, these are all the possible things that you have to tweak. And then we run it through an optimization program, and it tells us this is the optimum structure for a given volume. This will give us the minimum deflection for a given volume. We're going to talk about all that. I just like to have my dessert first, show you guys where we're headed, and then I'll show you how we get there. So we're going to talk about the physics modeling, and really you can stuff any model into this. As long as you have some kind of mathematical model of any kind, you can stuff it into an optimization algorithm and then explore what kind of minimums and maximums that system might have. For this one, we're going to be dealing with Newton's laws, and we're going to model a truss with springs because it's like a very simple structural model. It's one of the simpler ones. And then we're going to talk about basic ideas about optimization, what decision variables are, what constraints are, and what an objective function is, and then we're going to look at some predictions. This is not a rigorous explanation. My advisor is not in the room. All right, so my advisor isn't here, so this is not a rigorous explanation of structural analysis or optimization. It's just the idea. We're going to be skipping a lot of steps and a lot of details, and we're not going to talk about the numerical solvers for any of this because that's just like a whole different. There's not going there. It's really cool. It's really interesting. I'm happy to talk to you guys about it after this. It's one of my favorite things. So what are we dealing with? We're dealing with a truss member, and for this presentation, it's just going to be a long, slender member. It only carries axial forces, compression and tension, no bending moments, and it's round. We're not doing any special shapes or anything. We're just going to have a radius and a length. Very simple. Okay, so the model. So a mathematical model is really just an approximation of a process, or physics in this case, in the real world. The model we're going to look at is Newton's law, like I said, and that is F equals ma. That's probably all remember this from your physics class. Maybe some terrible memories. And for our structure, for what we do in structural engineering, is often we want our structures not to move. When you go in a building, you don't want it to move. That's a good thing. So we just set that to 0. That's really easy. You just set it to 0, done. And so we have a structure like this, and we have a force on it, and here's our reactions. And then we can decouple, like that's complicated, so we just decouple that. We put it in X and Y, and then we have some reactions down here. This is known as a free body diagram. But how are these forces, so we have an equilibrium here, because we're at 0. But these members develop an internal force, so we can break this force apart, and the internal forces and the external forces have to balance. So the members develop an internal force or stress, and that's what we need to get at. More complicated example, just so you guys aren't looking at triangles. So we can do like a truss or all kinds of stuff. We're not going to talk about that. That was just like to give you like more of a flavor that it's not just simple stuff. We can do really complicated structures. So how do we model a truss as a spring? That doesn't seem like these beams over here, this black one over here, that's just a big spring. That's all it is. It's just a big spring, I guarantee it. So we can use Hooke's law, which just assumes that there's a linear relationship between the stretch of the member and the force in the member. So it's just a linear relationship that is this material property that we derive from empirical testing for all kinds of materials. Steel, concrete, aluminum, titanium, carbon fiber, whatever you want, we can go get an E for it. We break our stress down as the force over the area. We break our strain down, which is really it's just a fancy term for the difference in the displacement. It's like a percentage almost. And then we can rearrange the equations, and we get down here, and here's our F internal. So those are our internal forces as a function of the force, P, and the displacement. So we're just going to stretch this thing, and we can determine the forces that make that up. And then, this is the part that I'm skipping, there's a lot of stuff that goes into this. We're assembling equivalent springs together where they share the nodes. So, okay, so we can go back. So like at this node here, if we call this a node, we'd have to assemble simultaneous equations. Maybe you guys remember that from algebra. You get into linear algebra, which is just assembly of a bunch of equations, really, at a given node. And then we can solve that. We can set that up as a big system, and we can solve that, and that gets into a whole thing that we're just not going to talk about. Okay, so that's our model. That's our physics model that we're going to solve with optimization. Okay, so we need some variables. Like we're going to change some variables because we need to explore the space. So we need to tease those variables around in a bunch of different ways to try and find a minimum or a maximum. But we also have to know what we're not allowed to do. Physics doesn't allow us to do certain things, or maybe we want to just have only a certain amount of volume, or we only want the structure to behave in a certain way. So we can put limitations on what that structure is allowed to do. And then what are we actually trying to minimize? So that's our objective function. Okay. So what variables in our system are we going to change in our truss structure, right? So if we just take a little cut here, we kind of saw this earlier, we can just notice that we could change this variable, and that's going to control the diameter of the truss. So we can take the truss and we can size that member up and down, and that's going to control the stiffness of that spring. If we have a really small area, it's going to be a really weak spring. We're going to be able to push on it or pull it really easily. If you have a really big area, vice versa. Okay, so if we have a bunch of truss elements, then we can just create a vector of all of those radii, and that's going to be our decision variables. So those are the things that we're going to change in the truss structure to try and find the optimum distribution of area. All right, constraints. What are we not allowed to do? Okay, so physics, from our Newton's law, says that we need to satisfy this equation, and really that's this equation. If you guys remember, that's our internal force, that's Ku is equal to F, so that's our physics. We need to satisfy this. And then we have to we need to limit the amount of available material. We can't just throw all the material in the world at it. We want to give it the minimum amount of material. One of the things I like to say is anybody can design a bridge that stands. It takes an engineer to design a bridge that barely stands. I love that saying. So we need to limit the amount of material to some value, and this is how we calculate it. So probably from geometry class somewhere, you guys remember your area formula. So this is how we get the volume of that member. And again, it's based on R. We're concerned about that R here. And that gives us everything we need to know about the volume. And then we can say, okay, our total volume of the whole structure is equal to a summation. Sorry, I probably should have written sum there instead of this fanciness. Is all the areas times all the corresponding lengths. And that'll give us the total volume for the structure at a given iteration of the optimization.
So once again, what's the K in the external force?
Say again?
What's the K in the external force?
This?
Is it related to the spring, or what's it?
Yeah, the K is related to the spring. Yeah, this is the spring stiffness. It's AE over L times the matrix for a given truss. Okay, what are we trying to maximize or minimize? Really what we do in the optimization world is everything is a minimum. And if you really want to maximize something, you take the negative of the maximum, and then it's a minimum. It's really easy. So everything is a minimum, but so we're trying to maximize the stiffness or minimize the deflection. So what does that mean? So that means if I press on something, I want it to move the minimum amount. So I don't have a camera. Okay, so if we're going to press on our little remote here, and we don't want it to move the minimum amount. So that's what we're trying to do. And that's maximizing the stiffness or minimizing the deflection. We're not going to really get into this, but so what we can do in optimization is we don't have to look at exactly the thing that we're trying to optimize. We can look at a proxy, and that's what we're going to do here, which is the strain energy in the system due to the deflection and the external forces. I know that's a lot of big words. Really, we're trying to minimize the deflection. That's what I would focus on. Ignore this guy. Just that. So that's what we're trying to minimize, which is minimizing the deflection. All right. So this is what an optimization program would look like. This is math. The first time I saw this was like maybe 2 years ago, and I was like, that's not math. This is, I don't know what this is, but it's not math that I've ever seen. So we're going to minimize, this is our objective function, such that, ST, these are our constraints here. Our physics, we want to not move, and then we have our volume, and we want to be under some total volume. So that's our optimization program. Okay, and then I wanted to get back to this again, see it again. So we've got our supports and our load, and then these are all the truss members. So it's just like what we had. There's just a lot more truss members here because it gives the optimization routine more choices. We have a lot more R's that we can play with in here to find the optimum structure, right? Because that's really what we're looking for. This thing, we're looking for where is the optimum in that structure. What is it? Oh, there we go. Yes. And so then if you record your optimization, this is what it looks like. And if you guys watch maybe like this one here, you can watch it grow. It's bouncing around. It's checking all the R's for all the different combinations. And it'll run, and it'll run. I think this is about 200 iterations in the optimizer of it just like checking over and over again a bunch of different combinations of R. There we go. Okay. So that was like a very basic introduction into structural optimization. These are some other things. I just like literally pulled these off of my research group's website like 5 minutes ago. But we can like if you give me a model of any kind, we can go in and start to optimize for different things. So we can do fluid flows. Some of you might recognize these. This looks like I think it's a Tesla valve. I think is the name of these.
Yeah.
Somebody in the back?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And so we can design things that are like Tesla valves. If you're not familiar with the Tesla valve, you have really good flow in one direction and really terrible flow in the other direction, and there's no moving components. They're fascinating structures. We can do metamaterials. So if you give me the material properties that you want, then I can give you an architected material that will match those properties. And we can even do really interesting things with like a negative Poisson's ratio, where like normally if you pull on a bit of material, you would expect it to collapse on the side. You would expect it to suck in. Maybe you guys have seen that. This material will actually expand. It'll go in the opposite direction when you pull on it. That's a negative Poisson. It's a very interesting material. And then we can do things, very interesting things for manufacturability. So what you're seeing here is that we can actually, this is for like 3D printing, we can actually dictate the overhang angle in 3D printing. So like in 3D printing, you have a maximum overhang angle that you can print without supports. We can deal with that. We can design your structure optimally to handle different angles of overlap in the 3D printing, and that's where these pictures came from. I don't have a question slide. I forgot. Does anybody have any questions? William in the back.
And I just want to comment so NASA recently tested something called a rotating detonation engine.
Yeah.
And the valves they use to inject fuel are these Tesla valves because they can't just have a physical valve turn on and off really quickly.
Yep.
So they need to rely on something that lets them, that the fuel go in one direction but not the other, and Tesla valve is perfect. And they couldn't make that before until they had 3D printing.
Yeah.
Okay, great explanations, even though it mostly went over my head.
Sorry.
But you did a really good job,
Thank you.
through that. How do you so you're finding a minimum. How do you, with that first one, you're drawing a structure. How do you know that's not just a local minimum?
Oh, sorry. Apologize. Oh, yes, we don't. So this is actually one of the things that we get into a lot is there are certain systems, what we call a convex system. If we can show that the system is convex, then we know that it has a global minimum and we can find it very easily. If you are non-convex, we can find local minimums all day long, and we can prove for certain systems that a global minimum exists. Finding it, I have a buddy that loves to he's big into optimization, and he is absolutely convinced against all odds that he is going to find a way to prove global minimms.
And it's sometimes you want to satisfy, because if you optimize everything, then you run out of resources to do that. So sometimes you just want to satisfy.
Yeah, that too. So one of the things we can do is stochastic optimization. So basically, if you have a large design space, we can just pick a bunch of different starting points and let all those optimize and then pick the minimum from those. And so that's a global optimization, but there's no proof that it's a global minimum. I don't know who was first. Go ahead.
What is your search algorithm?
So what I use for this is called MMA, method of moving asymptotes, which I think the sub-algorithm for that is a nonlinear interior point method. Don't ask me to derive that for you, but
So your problem is not convex.
yes, yeah, these are highly non-convex. Yeah.
How long does it take? That whole search?
The whole run, it's not very long, minutes. Yeah, it's not very long at all.
I was going to say, what tools or programming languages do you use for this stuff?
Fortran. It is blazingly fast. I dare you to write in anything else and be as fast as you are in Fortran. And you can use it on a GPU. I have done it, and it is ridiculously fast. I actually did, I don't know if this will mean anything to anybody in the room, but I actually did 15 million degrees of freedom on my laptop, recently. And that's from 2019 or something like that, with Fortran on a GPU. On the GPU on my laptop. Did you have another question in the back?
Yeah, so an actual question. So what made you pick, what was the algorithm again?
Method of moving asymptotes?
Yeah, versus say a linear optimization.
Well, we can't use linear optimization for this because it's a nonlinear problem.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we can't use something like simplex because the problem it's just not. There are other types of nonlinear solvers. There's sequential quadratic programming, and that's the one I'm really familiar with. Struggling to come up with other ones. There are other ones out there, but MMA is really well tailored for problems like this. If you get back to me in 2 or 3 years, I'll be able to really tell you more about it. So, but yeah, all right, good. Yeah.
Okay, Lanre, you're up.
Hi everyone. That was such a high bar. That's probably the most sophisticated physics. Is that physics class or something? What just happened just now? Physics class. That's one of the most sophisticated I've been. But thank you. My name is Larry, and I'm the CEO and founder of Prembly. Basically, were $4 million backed up company, and also backed up by YC. And while I was driving here, I really want to talk about this topic quite long. But I did change my mind while I was driving here to say I was going to talk about or actually not some, the most important lesson that I think I should have learned before I started my company. And I do think if I just share it, it could resonate to so many people, and it may not resonate to a lot, but I do think that everyone in the room will most likely learn from it. And typically it's the idea of building for all. So please do, I'm not going to use a slide, I'm just going to leave this very fast to people on the screen. You can also take off, just assume that what's there, it's building for all. Now, quick background. We're going to tell you what we do in Prembly. So what we do in Prembly is we make it possible for businesses to easily verify and authenticate that you're actually real and that you're actually who you say you are. Sometimes people don't think about that. Sometimes, you want your next apartment, you get a new job, or you want to send money to someone in Hong Kong, or Taiwan, or anywhere in the world actually. But people really don't think about some of the underlying technologies that make it possible to say, I'm actually Larry, or you are actually whoever you say you are. And so we work with a lot of banks here in the US, in Europe, anywhere in the world. We're actually quite big now on emerging markets. So our biggest market is Sub-Saharan Africa, doing some stuff in Latin and also Southern Asia. And so what we do is that when someone in New York wants to send money to someone in Algeria, we tell them, just give me a phone number or an ID of this person, and we let them know if this person is real or not, if it's fake or it's not fake, whatever it is. Last year, we actually, with our technology, stopped over 12 million unique fraud from happening. Today, we verified uniquely between 2.5 to 3 million unique people to say, this person actually should have access to this service because they're actually saying the truth, because they're actually what they say they are. Now, that wasn't what I wanted to do. I just wanted to be the payment solution, biometric payment solution. You walk into the store, you pay with your biometrics, your face, your voice, whatever it is, and you walk out. But something led to another, and I thought about the idea of why is this so difficult that, a 25-year-old person here in the US have access to credit, or access to less than that, have access to credit services, you can live life, you can move out. But some other 25-year-old somewhere in another part of the world do not have that access. Why? Don't have access to credit. They don't have access to basic things that they should have access to. Not because they're not real or not because they haven't, they're also educated, but just simply because for some reason, if I am right now in Nigeria, I can have access, I can sell stuff on Amazon. If I move all the way to, let's say, South Africa, you can't send money to me through PayPal. Not because I'm not real, not because my business is not legit, but somehow, this business just don't know how to verify me because I'm in South Africa, or I'm in, Egypt, and because I haven't flown all the way to the US. And what that does is that it limits prosperity, it limits access. And so it's borrowing some of the things that we do today, because I'm sure everybody in this room, we're all leaders, and we lead team, we build things. Sometimes we all have blind spots around, am I actually building for everyone? Or am I actually building for people that look like me? Or building for people that have the same experience as I am? Now, there are a lot of people that are quite smarter than I am, and they've proven that typically we all are biased. And sometimes, we build, or we invest, or we support people that have the same experience as we do, that look like us, that probably we can always converse with, that we share the some level of opinion with. And that is why, some people feel that if you go to one of the worst places to go as a person of color to raise funds is San Francisco, because only 0.1, not 1%, only 0.1% of fund around there are given to people that are not, people of color. Now, I'm not saying they have to. I'm just saying these are some of the points that people that are smarter than me have said, right? To say somehow access is open. You typically, I would most likely give access to someone that typically look like me right now, probably, that I've gone to carry business with because I went to carry business with. I think sometimes when we build technology, sometimes we also see some of these things from that lens. One of our most innovative technology that we built was being able to verify people by just taking a picture of them. So we take a picture of you, we can predict your country, where you're from. We can link that to the government database, and we say, this person is real. And we can also provide not just 20, 30 information about this person, the next of kin. And 2 years after we built that, we just figured out that somehow we have tens of thousands of people that have been trying to use that technology but couldn't use it, not because they're not real, just because they're blind. So today we serve companies like Uber, like London Stock Exchange markets. And so let's say, and London Stock Exchange markets use that technology to verify people from Nigeria, for instance, if you want to trade on the market. But somehow, because they use us to verify people like that, if you live with disability and you're blind, you can't buy stocks on the market. And that struck me a bit differently. To see, I started this company to be able to create a leveling ground where someone from any part of the world could have access to anything, right? And not just, just for a certain group of people. And so that was when we changed some of our focus as a company to say, whenever we're building a product, whenever we're building a technology, we will have to ask questions to say, can people that do not look like us, can people that do not have the same assets that we have, also use the kind of technology that we're building? And we've seen the difference. And I do urge everyone, and all of us, leading teams in charge of different projects, to sometimes ask the hard questions when we're doing this. Because most times some of the answers are actually right there, they have questions. We don't like the answers, most likely. Sometimes the answers would have us spend more time in the projects we're running, have us get more funding or need more resources. But I think at the core of innovating and building the right future, I think we shouldn't leave some people behind. Now let me say this. I wasn't texting in 2000. I'm sure that the few people in the room that probably were texting in 2000. But texting became a thing on mobile phone in the year 2000. It was 10 years later for people that live with disability could text. 10 years later. There's still so many things right now that people that live with disability can have access to. Sometimes we leave them behind. The 20% of Americans that need some sort of support, some sort of technology that we have access to right now, they do not have access to it. So if we're leaving some people behind for a decade and we just forget them, right? And thankfully Apple has been doing a lot, and Google with Siri and Amazon, thankfully. But what I'm saying is, if we have spent 1 decade to have left some certain people behind, now imagine the number of people that we've left behind for 20 years, 30 years, and somehow we're on the race to go to the moon, we're on the race to build the next thing. And there are a whole lot of people behind us that we're just leaving behind. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to end with this, summarize with this, to say, innovation is good. We should change the future. But at the heart of this, we should also ask the hard questions. And one of those hard questions we need to ask is to say, am I creating a future for all of us? Thank you. Again, I don't know if that's going to come questions, but I'm fine if there are no questions. Please.
I'm curious, how you started the company and how did you get through YC and raise funds?
Thanks. So I wanted to build a conversation, like I said, walking to a store and just build the biometrics. It was 2019. And I did build it. I built a product where when you walk into the store, all you have to do is just take a selfie. You literally connect your biometrics to your banking details. Because when you sign up into the app, you put your biometrics information, you put your bank details. And so typically when you go to the store right now, you put your card, yeah? What happens with technology is just the card reader just became, let's say, the 4-digit code of that card or some stuff, so it's clear that you own that card. If you use debit card, they request for your 4-digit PIN. If you use credit card, sometimes they don't, right? And pretty much that's it, that's the technology. So what I did was to do a reverse engineering where you don't need that 4-digit PIN, and I'm just saying, I have captured this person's face, and I'm going to pass that face to you, and say, just authenticate this person. So I did it, launched it out in 2019, but interestingly, no one used it. I deployed a couple of stores, and no one used it, even though I thought it was quite innovative. And so I went back to the stores, and they gave me two reasons why people were not using it. And in my view, this was not in the US. The first one was, and this was in Nigeria, the first one was, we're quite religious in some part of the world. And so there's a context of the mark of the beast. I don't know if anybody here understands the mark of the beast. But it's 666. And what that means is that at some point in the world, there's going to be an antichrist that's going to come up. Some people thought it was Donald Trump, unfortunately it wasn't. But there's going to be an antichrist someday that's going to force all of us to have the mark of the beast on our forehead and our hand. Interestingly, some people thought I was the mark of the beast. They thought I was the antichrist. Because how will you walk into the store and just play with your face and leave? Right? And they didn't use the technology because of that. The second reason was the storekeeper said, we're not sure if truly you're charging the right account. And so, because we don't want to get into trouble when the policeman comes. And so I said, okay, how can I show them that I've actually verified this person? That actually the person that is checking out actually owns this. And I was surprised that there are over 1 billion people globally that do not have any form of ID. It's 1% of that number stays in sub-Saharan Africa. You don't know who they are, you don't know where they are, you don't know where they live. And so I started figuring out, okay, I want to use technology to verify people to say, people actually who they say they are at the point of checkout. I couldn't figure it out. And so I said, I was going to build this. And so I built the first engine, algorithm, by myself, with my team. And so I gathered my team, and I said, you know what, guys, we're not going to build a payment solution, we're building a biometric solution, a data company. My time is up? You're good. Okay. And I did it the first time, right? One of the companies I initially reached out to say, hey, how did you verify people? They couldn't figure it out, like a bank, actually. Because what they do is that when they say fake transactions, they call the customer physically to say, hey, what's your name again? Can you do a video call? Stuff like that. That's what they do to verify people. And they still do it today. If anyone today sends money outside of the US, typically you can get a call from your bank to say, hey, I just want to clarify. And so they said, can you give us API? I said, yeah, why not? Then, I converted to API, sent it to them. The next day, they paid me $5,000. I gathered my team the next day, and I said, guys, you know what? We're no longer a payments company. Now we're a data company, right? And I just started it from there. So I got a bit of traction, raised my pre-seed of 36,000, then applied for YC. As the traction really helped, got into YC. And typically when you get into YC, you get like half $500,000 as well. Was done with YC in 2022, March, then raised another 2.8 million. And just actually, I woke up this morning again to sign another 1 million investment. Thanks. Is there any other questions? Yes.
Great presentation. For me, I don't think I mentioned I'm also getting my master's in public health, and my capsule project is focused around. Initially, I wanted to do work around like coverage and utilization of AI-driven disease management tools. So like the stress I have to do to get those data sets of insurance making, and set to look at policy and enforcement frameworks. And interestingly, I found a paper that done kind of research on it about coverage. And we're seeing that most of the AI-driven disease management tools in the US are being utilized within the richest zip codes, right?
Yeah.
So based on the exposure you've gotten, you've got into YC, you have some sort of network now. How can you champion for more diversity, right, of these innovative solutions? How do you also think we can, within our little networks, champion for more diversity?
Yeah. Thanks for the question. So, how? That's a big one. I think how starts from we having conversations like this, making sure that in our lead to quarters or the big one, we have conversations that ask questions like, so when you build AI technologies, for instance, have you used the right data? I think we also need to encourage the policymakers. I would strongly say that we need to actually speak more to policymakers. Because what we've done, what we have right now, it's a hard fact. Some people do not like it, but what we have right now is that the big techs actually are dictating what happens in AI. And the regulators are doing catch-up. Right? And so what we have right now, we have OpenAI determining what AI should look like. And so we have a player also being the umpire at the same time. Right? And right now we're having, regulators trying to do catch-up. So I do think the big conversation we should have is, I think we should put a bit of pressure on policymakers, to release the right frameworks, guide every one of us. Because to be honest, as much as we want to be ethical with some of the AI technologies that we build, every single company has used AI to maximize profits for themselves. That's the honest truth. And you could come out of the media to say something else, but the honest truth is you're not going to build any AI that would put your company in a disadvantaged position or reduce your OPEX, right? So pretty much, I don't know if that's the question, but definitely what I think is we need to encourage policymakers to have conversations more like that and ask big questions. But in our own little also, we should be ethical in some of those technologies that we build.
One more question.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Last one, Sean. It's a good segue AI, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'm Sean Pack. I'm one of the design partners at B'More Designful. I was very inspired to give this talk on what it means to have taste in the era of AI, which is the attribute that I believe is what it takes to win out in this era. And so, without further ado, I'll be talking about the metaphor of being on Ox, the overall climate of AI at a very high level, the meaning of good taste, a way to think about good taste and how to cultivate good taste, as well as some examples and applications. So what does it mean that you're on Ox? And most recently, it came to my attention that there are some generational differences. Some people understood it as, oh, I'm being plugged into something, and my generation and millennials think of it as you have control over the speaker for music. And that was what I was going for. So being on Ox, you're in control over the music. And why? Because maybe you know what sounds good, you know what everyone likes, and maybe you know what the right vibe is to create a good, fun environment when you're on a road trip with your friends. So essentially, you're taking the wheel musically, being the DJ, being mood setter, playlist king, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, it's because you have good taste. Now, current climate of AI, there's so much possibility, even at this day and age. So AI can imitate styles, both in terms of creating images, videos, audio, and then even copy. And it can generate things and really high quality content from scratch. Now, for good taste, one definition that I found is that it's the ability to make valid judgments about an object's aesthetic value. And the importance of having good taste is that it provides more meaning in life, and you kind of experience more and enjoy more higher order experiences. And one of the prime examples is the Italian market, where a lot of people, or there's enough people that are willing to spend a lot more money in things that kind of make them happy, maybe for like some aesthetic quality, whether that be visual, experiential, and so on and so forth. And when you cultivate good taste, you can expect to find uniqueness, quality control, and preservation of what's creative. So in terms of uniqueness, you can have a better ability to evoke emotions, create meaningful experiences, and also create original work. And then for quality control, you can expect to create high quality work of your own, or even collections of high quality work. And then for creative preservation, especially with AI tools, you're able to know how to navigate that and also push boundaries on artistic innovation. I'll get into that in a little bit. So a good way to kind of think about it, or how I've thought about it in terms of cultivating good taste, it all comes down to laying a solid foundation in knowledge. And this is being able to identify good work and also bad work, so basically the what. The next level from knowledge is the why. So you have the language to describe why something is of good work, why something might be aesthetic, and you have reasonings to back it up. And then the next level is reproduction. So you know how to reproduce this good work, and then you're able to lead some AI machine in order to probably prompt engineer it with good rhetoric. And if you don't have that, then the machine ends up leading the artist instead of vice versa. And at the top of this pyramid for good taste, you have kind of like novelty and creation. So you're able to have that creative expression and originality in your work. Now, if we look at music, for instance, does anyone know like Baroque music or familiar? Yeah, wonderful. So for those that don't know Baroque music, one of the most important eras of music, they perform classical and romantic music, and it's still performed today. One of the most notable musicians, composers is Bach, and then he inspired Mozart, Beethoven, and so on and so forth. And then in this context, being able to recognize Baroque and hearing that it is good music is kind of like the what. The next level for articulation is being able to explain what makes Baroque music so good. And one component of this could be understanding the rule sets, the characteristics and attributes of Baroque, the music from this time period. And then the next level is being able to reproduce Baroque music without any reference. And again, this builds off of understanding how or what the attributes of Baroque music is. And at the highest level in this instance is being able to create your own Baroque style music and even blending other styles and creating something of your own. And just to save on time, I did a quick, one slider for code writing. And good taste in coding is something that's very clean, efficient, readable, and maintainable. And it follows overall good programming principles and design patterns. And using AI tools like to help write code, you want to make sure that you produce high-quality software and that it is scalable. And in good taste, when it comes to code writing, there is some elegance to some code. And it's kind of like a middle ground between something that's very simple, that's very readable, easily understandable and maintainable, but also there's some added layer of sophistication. And then so for the application of good taste in AI, before we saw kind of like a 2D pyramid. If we think like for the example of Baroque music, that could be thought of as one cross-section in this whole domain of music. Now, if we consider other styles of music, so this would be expanding your breadth of knowledge, that unlocks your ability to create your own also with AI through robust prompt engineering. So here I have an example of image generation. So in my head, I thought of a Japanese garden, and I had an idea of like what I wanted to make. And with limited language, this is what I was able to make. A colorful painting of a Japanese garden with grid styling containing a unique color blend. But that doesn't really look too aesthetic, and I would say that's a good taste. But if you're able to really articulate certain styles and really have that vision in your head and have that rhetoric to express it, the machine is then really led well by the artist instead of vice versa. So for this new prompt, I asked the model to blend the chaotic, vibrant brushstrokes of abstract expressionism with the precise geometric forms of minimalist art to create a painting of a Japanese garden. So there are two, areas of art or art styles that I included that I was kind of imagining, and then also the qualities of such that I was able to articulate to the model to create what it is that I was thinking. And so my final thoughts about like all this, so like what I'm doing, essentially I'm implying that we all need a liberal arts education, more or less. But I don't think that there are any high schoolers in the audience, so we all, I guess, have our degrees more or less. But instead, what we can do is self-directed, self-regulated education to kind of dive deeper into arts, history, literature, and really having that breadth of knowledge. And when we use AI tools, we're able to have that rhetoric to again express what it is that we're thinking or have in mind. And what I'm currently doing is reading poetry with the goal that I can write good copy and just writing in general. The other thing is artificial intelligence is still artificial. Humans really have and still have that creative directive to test and experiment with new works and kind of know what kind of feels right. And so I encourage like everyone to aim to have good taste. And there's a lot of research that supports an understanding that adjacent knowledge is useful for innovation. And when you have a good understanding of what makes something good, then you can kind of bring together seemingly far apart genres or styles and kind of collide them together to create something original and interesting. And so I also believe that taste is kind of like a blend between both innate ability and a sharpened skill. And by having good taste, you really are able to develop a highly idiosyncratic style, which makes you become a category of one. And I leave you guys with two questions. How's your rhetoric, and what do you have good taste? Thank you.
Go back to the slide on Bach, please. So it seems like
Which slide?
The Bach one.
When you're talking about like knowledge, like
This?
yeah, that's but you're talking about like the step of like identifying, identifying art. Like, is this art or is it not? And it seems like they're saying like it was like here's a if you take one of the Bach toccata or Wagner's work, whatever, you say this is a Baroque style piece. You can tell from the chord progressions and
sure.
Whatever. So therefore it qualifies as art. But is there do you have any sort of idea of like a fundamental or like from scratch way of analysis of given an arbitrary like wavefile, and then I ask you, is this music? And you have to tell me back yes or no. Like, you've got music artists out there like Maris Collins or Throbbing Gristle or Meredith Monk. These people create art with huge quotation marks. And a lot of people would consider that noise or just garbage. And so, but there is structure in those pieces that they're creating. So it's not noise in the technical sense of just randomness. Bach especially is very, very, very structured.
Yep.
So you have to know that the classification of the genre era is something that we just have in history. It's not something that's an emergent. It's not an emergent property of the piece itself or recording of the performance of the piece. So I was just wondering, like, if I gave you, do you have any thoughts on that? How, given an arbitrary piece of unstructured data, would you come back and say, yes, this is art, or no, this is not art?
I love that question. My first intuition tells me that, like, to cop out and say art is subjective, as many say. I think taste, and what I mean by it bringing you to the category of one, is that for any established style, if you're able to create something that is of that style with something new, maybe like a twist, then other people will also appreciate it as well. But if it's something like unmarked territory, then there's less people that might have structural understanding of, okay, like these are qualities of good music, but this particular like arbitrary music file doesn't follow any like qualities of things that they might have been familiar with. So it's unlocking kind of like a new avenue of taste.
Yeah, we people have been arguing about this for millennia.
I bet, yeah.
What is art? I would comment just that maybe get away from the moral side of qualifiers of good and bad. It sounds like what you're saying is does this piece resemble other known pieces that have been classified as baroque or impressionist or whatever? If so, then it's fair to classify this new piece as something.
Yep.
If that's okay.
Elliot, why don't you?
Do you think that AI-produced works should always be labeled as such, like as opposed to human-created works going forward? I mean, this is like more of an issue with like music, you know,
yeah,
on YouTube. But I don't know. It's just sort of an interesting question,
I think it all kind of falls under a spectrum of whether or not it's an existing style or like an artist's like voice that they use. But even still, if it's, I guess, a collision of two disparate, I guess, styles, and you basically invent your own, my personal opinion is that it's fair game.
So I guess my question is, like, choice to your final slide in the request or the encouragement about all of us pursuing liberal arts. And I guess my question is, what benefits do you think there are, if anything, of pursuing good taste in non-liberal arts areas? So let's say being able to identify good movies or good podcasts, or even just like sports or something like that. So I'm just curious if that's relevant to your talk at all.
Yeah. So I came at this angle as a designer, hence the logo, at my brand studio. But yeah, taste really transcends like domain, and especially sports. Like if you have like a hot take, but if it's a very sound take on like a team or a player, then that kind of resonates with other people. And I think it all comes down to the expression of which, like, what that take is. Maybe one of your examples was like good taste in music or good taste in film, right? And it's like, if you can have that rhetoric to explain like why this particular film is so well made, whether it's the cinematography or maybe dialogue that's happening, then others can find that appreciation and see that it is quote unquote good, or why you find appreciation for it. I think at the end of the day, like, taste is being able to discern like what's worth appreciation, even if it's like for one person.
Do you think that the models would ever develop taste? And if so, would it be superior to that of humans?
I most certainly hope that's after I pass away.
Hey. Okay. All right, thanks guys for coming. That's pretty much it. There's still some pizza left and there's not beer, but there's brisk. So there's something. So yeah, enjoy yourselves. Thank you guys. And another round of applause for all the speakers.